Today, we're diving into a massive question, one that societies have wrestled with for centuries. Can a country ever be truly at peace if its economy is wildly unequal? It's a huge puzzle, and we're going to unpack it together.
So let's just put the question right out there. Can you have real, lasting peace without economic equality? Does a stable society mean everyone has to have more or less the same amount of wealth, or is there something else going on?
And right off the bat, let's be clear. This is not a simple yes or no question. The real answer is way more nuanced. It's all about finding this delicate balance between what people have and what they feel is a fair shot at a better life.
So, to get started, let's look at the heart of the problem itself. Why do we even connect these two things, peace and inequality? Where does that link come from? What makes it such an unstable foundation?
Well, think of it like a chain reaction. When you get these really extreme gaps in wealth, it starts to squeeze people's access to the basics, like good schools or decent healthcare. Then, that huge amount of wealth starts to translate into political power for a tiny elite, and over time, that just builds up this widespread resentment, and maybe most dangerously, it starts to eat away at people's trust in the whole system.
And listen to the words in this quote: exclusion, injustice, and humiliation. This shows us it's not just about dollars and cents. We're talking about deep, powerful human emotions that can absolutely bubble over into conflict when people feel like they're being left out in the cold.
Okay, so this brings us to what is maybe the single most important idea in this entire discussion. To really get to the bottom of this, we have to crack the code, so to speak, on two ideas that sound similar but are actually worlds apart: equality and fairness.
Okay, so check this out. On one side, you have economic equality. This is all about the outcome, making sure everyone ends up with roughly the same size slice of the pie. But on the other side, you have economic fairness. And this is all about opportunity, making sure everyone has a genuine shot to go out and earn their own slice. They are two totally different goals.
And here's the kicker. When you look back at history, the most stable societies weren't always the ones where everyone had the exact same amount of money. No, they were the societies where people believed the system was fundamentally fair, where they felt that if they worked hard, they could get ahead, and that they weren't just stuck.
So, what happens when that sense of fairness completely breaks down? How does that huge gap between the rich and poor actually turn into conflict? Well, it turns out there are some pretty clear pathways.
It tends to happen in stages. It often starts with this idea called relative deprivation. This is a big one. It's not about being poor in absolute terms. It's that feeling of deep injustice you get when you're struggling to get by, but you see obscene wealth flaunted all around you. That frustration can then lead to step 2, where people just completely lose faith in their institutions. And finally, you get to economic marginalization, where a lack of jobs and opportunity just creates this perfect storm for social unrest.
But, and this is so important, high inequality isn't a guaranteed path to conflict. It's not automatic. A lot of it really comes down to the other systems you have in place. See, if you've got high inequality and weak institutions, yeah, you're probably heading for trouble. But if you have strong social safety nets, you can actually dial down those tensions and maintain a lot of stability.
All right, so we've talked a lot about the problem. What about the solution? This is where we shift gears and look at the blueprint for building a kind of peace that lasts, one that's built on an economy that includes everyone. So what does that look like? Well, you need a few key pillars. You need economic growth that actually benefits a lot of people, not just a handful at the top. You need those strong social safety nets we just mentioned. You absolutely need a tax system that people see as fair. And maybe most of all, you need real, genuine upward mobility, that core belief that you can do better than your parents did.
Because at the end of the day, a lasting peace is built when people feel like they have a real stake in the game. When they can see a doctor, get their kids a good education, and believe their hard work actually means something, well, then they have a very good reason to keep things stable.
And what do you get when you have all of that? You get something incredibly powerful, a shared identity. When an economy works for everyone, it helps build bridges. People start to see themselves as part of the same team, pulling in the same direction. And that is a fundamental ingredient for living together peacefully.
Okay, let's bring it all home. We've looked at the problem, how it can spiral into conflict, and what the solutions look like. So what's the final verdict on our big question from the beginning?
So here's the bottom line. For a society to be peaceful, you don't actually need perfect economic equality. In fact, trying to force that can sometimes stifle the very innovation that creates wealth in the first place.
What is essential, though, is preventing inequality from becoming so extreme and so permanent that it strips people of their dignity, their opportunities, and their basic sense of security. It's a balancing act.
And that brings us to our answer. So, can peace exist without economic equality? The answer is, it doesn't need perfect equality. But what it absolutely cannot survive without is a widespread belief that the system is fair, that it's inclusive, and that it offers a real shot at a better life. That belief, that is the bedrock of peace.
So, we'll leave you with this to think about. If fairness is really the key, more important than just the raw numbers of equality, then that puts a really profound question back on all of us. What does a truly fair society actually look like to you?